Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Was Reborn as a Shinigami, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto sighed and flopped onto the couch. He'd been able to get away with having the chains on his arm as long as he wore his jacket, but hadn't had that luxury when Tenten decided that she was cold. He looked at Sanosuke and waved his hand in a circular motion, wishing for the angel to continue. The brown-haired man seed an eyebrow and shifted on his feet. Naruto groaned and stood again. Okay, why are you here? Why Naruto, I'm hurt. No hello. No how you doing? TSK, you should be ashamed of yourself. Well, I'm not. Now come on, let's get this over with, I have to meet Tenten in the morning. Training again. That girl is a slave driver. Yeah, she is, but she helps me at least. It's more than I can say for others. Be that as it may, we have something else to discuss. Namely those chains on your arms. Do you know how you got them? Well, I had another weird dream. I was talking to QB and I broke the chains around our ankles, tying him back up with strands of my hair. I said that no matter what we were tied with, my willpower was the thing that held him back. Then I woke up as I was staring at the glowing chains in that murky sewer water. In the real world, I had these on. I can't seem to get them off though. Tell me, do you know what the purpose of those chains are? Well, Tenten showed me how to use them as a defensive thing. That was pretty cool. Other than that, no. I've had some ideas for offensive capabilities, but I can't get the damn things off. Get your hammer and come with me. What? Why? Sanosuke turned his head and glared at the blonde. Haven't you learned yet that I don't do anything without a reason? Now get your hammer and follow me. We're going to the training grounds. Man, I gotta train with Tenten tomorrow. If I'm not rested, she'll K me. Literally. I'll take care of that, now come on. Naruto looked at him, not really trusting the angel fully. He was a likable enough guy, but he had a prankster streak like Naruto. Shouldering his hammer, Naruto stalked off after the angel, who walked with his hands behind his back, in a manner similar to how someone Naruto used to know walked. Once at the training grounds that he and Tenten now destroyed on a regular basis, Naruto let his hammer fall to the ground with a loud thud and a quake. Sanosuke sighed and turned to face his underling. Now then, I'll ask you again. What do you know about these chains? I already told you what I know. I don't know anything else. You're not thinking again. This is a gift, Naruto, and all your gifts are connected to that hammer some way so far. Think, what can you do with that chain? Naruto sat down and leaned against the hammer. For some reason he always thought more clearly when it was nearby or in his hand. It calmed him, and that was a welcome thing. Closing his eyes, he crossed his legs and clasped his hands together. He imagined himself on the battlefield, the chains around his arms, his hammer in his hand. He watched himself deflect kunai with the chains and knock people around with the hammer. But soon the enemy was standing out of range and he couldn't get close enough without leaving himself open. What could he do to get them? Naruto opened his eyes and stared at the angel in front of him, who stood watching with bright eyes. It was always fun watching someone come to a realization themselves. That face they made when it finally came to them was always so funny. What if I attached the chain to the hammer's handle and swung it? Sanosuke smiled and clapped his hands together. Let's give it a shot. Naruto stood and grabbed the hammer with his right hand. He glanced back and forth from the end of the handle to the last link of the chain and turned a sheepish grin to Sanosuke. Okay, give me a hint. How do I attach this thing? Just push your chakra into both and they'll connect. Naruto closed his eyes again and concentrated on shoving chakra into the two items. The hammer readily accepted it, but each individual link had to be charged, and though it didn't take much, there were many of them to fill. His eyes sprung open and he watched as the chain began to unravel and the end link attached itself to the end of the hammer's handle. Sanosuke's grin threatened to break his face as he watched Naruto's jaw drop in awe. That's so awesome. Now let's see. Think outside the box. What to do? I know. Naruto looked at a boulder across the clearing and concentrated on it. Holding the hammer over his head, he began to twirl it by the chain until it was a veritable propeller. This would make a good defense as well. Sizing up the boulder, he let the hammer fly and watched his arms with interest. The chains never seized his skin, they just unraveled and followed the hammer. Satisfied that the chains weren't dangerous, he watched as the hammer impacted with the boulder, splitting it in twain. He left the slightly glowing chain and hammer lie on the ground as he turned back to Sanosuke. So, not bad, huh? Indeed, very impressive. Now how do you propose you get it back? You can't very well leave it there, otherwise you'll be vulnerable. Actually, I was hoping you'd tell me something. If these things are imbued with my chakra, can I control them independently of the hammer? Kind of like Gaara's sand. You could try it. First try to get the hammer back. Recall the chain mentally and see what happens. Naruto nodded and concentrated. He willed the hammer to return over and over. His eyes widened exponentially when the chain came flying back, the links winding over his arms over and over before the hammer was back in his hands with a loud slap of metal against F. Sanosuke clapped the boy on the back and nodded his approval. Very good, Naruto. Now detach the hammer and try your other idea. How? Just take back the chakra in it. Yep. Easy as that. Naruto nodded and pulled his chakra back. The hammer's faint glow receded and the chain fell limp from its end before wrapping around Naruto's forearm again. He seated his head and sat the hammer down. Concentrating, he watched as the chains unraveled from both wrists and began to float in the air, winding and twisting through the air like a serpent. Deciding to see what happened, Naruto commanded him to attack Sanosuke. The angel had been standing a few feet away from the Jinchuriki, watching happily as his latest gift began to manifest itself quite usefully. The smile quickly left his face, however, when the chains seemed to perk up in midair and turn their attention to him. Quick as lightning, the chains were after him as he flipped and dodged as artfully as a man wearing a robe could. The few times he had a second to breathe, he cut his eyes to Naruto and saw the boy had a smirk on his face. Well, he'd teach the sly little brat a thing or two. Naruto's smirk quickly left his face when the angel darted toward him and began to punch and kick with vigor. Naruto blocked with his arms and shins and tried to command the chains to strike Sanosuke at the same time. The results were mixed. He couldn't concentrate hard enough if he was blocking to make a counterattack, and by the time he could, Sanosuke had ducked around to another vantage point and was striking him there. Growling in frustration, Naruto flung his left hand out to grab the angel and the chain around his left arm, rose and followed the strike. Realizing what he had done, Naruto jumped back several feet and began to wave his hands like a conductor, as Sanosuke ducked and dodged around the chains like a ballet dancer. The angel kept dodging, testing the boy's ability with the links until it began to get a little too dangerous. Being an angel, he didn't have to worry about death, but since he had a physical body, things like that still hurt. Those kunai Naruto and Tenten had impaled him with had hurt badly, but he'd only grunted to make it seem as if they were an annoyance. The knowledge that you can't except by the hand of Kami is a reassuring thing. Sanosuke quickly flipped out of range of the chains as they ground against one another, making a screeching sound as if they were angry their prey got away. All right, that's enough. Naruto quickly willed the chains to return and they wrapped around his arms quickly. He stood and waved his arms around, checking that the chains were secure, before pulling the chakra out of the links. He let out a breath and smiled at Sanosuke. Well, what I think you need a little more work. I want you to practice all night tonight on making the chains bend to your will until it becomes second nature. Making gestures with your hands seems to make the chains flow more easily, but I would like to see them work almost independently like your friend Gaara's sand. Do you think you can do that? I don't know. I'll try, I guess. But you want me to work all night and I have to meet Tenten here tomorrow. How am I going to practice if I'm tired? Sanosuke sighed and stepped up in front of Naruto. I'm an angel, you stupid boy. If I don't want you to sleep for a full day, then you won't sleep for a full day. In fact, I'll make it so you won't fall asleep until midnight tomorrow. Before Naruto could protest, Sanosuke raised his hands and slapped Naruto on both sides of his head. The blonde scowled and cursed at the angel, who took a step back with a smirk. Damn it, why does everything you do to me end with me getting hit? Was that really necessary? The touching of the head to negate your need for sleep. Yes. The slaps upside the head. No. That was just for fun. Now get to work. Sanosuke disappeared before Naruto could send his chains at him again, laughing to himself as the boy cursed and swore like a sailor. Tenten yawned and sat up in her bed. She hadn't slept that good in quite some time. The pleasant odor that permeated in the air had helped immensely. It was soothing and comforting, something she was not used to. Stretching her arms, she felt something slide off her shoulders and turned slightly to see what it was. Her eyes widened when she saw it was Naruto's jacket. She smiled and laid down, cuddling the jacket against her cheek before sitting up, red-faced, and looked around the room. Good thing no one was around to see that little tidbit. She swung her legs off the bed and shivered when her bare feet hit the cold floor. Deciding that a shower was in order, she bounced into the bathroom and turned the tap. As she washed and her brain began to kick on, her thoughts turned back to the night before. It had been so much fun and they hadn't done anything special. Yet it was the little things Naruto did that made her feel like a queen. Pulling her chair out for her, letting her wear his jacket, carrying her home in his arms. She sighed when she thought about that. He'd even been kind enough to tuck her in and leave like a true gentleman. And that warmth that he emitted was so lovely. It was intoxicating. That was the true reason she wanted him to carry her all the time. Well, that and it made her feel protected. Being a kunoichi was tough. You had to be tough as nails and hardly ever got to show your sensitive side. Being an abrasive bee like Ino or Sakura was not an exception. Walking out of her shower with a towel around her body and a towel on her head, she was rubbing furiously at her head when a shock of white caught her eyes and she looked up into the amused eyes of Sanosuke. She shrieked and began to pelt him with anything that wasn't nailed down. He good-naturedly dodged everything, catching the things that could be damaging to her apartment and setting them on her bed until she calmed down enough to speak to him. What the F are you doing in my apartment? You can't just appear whenever you want, Angel. And I know you knew I was in the shower. Well, yes, but I didn't expect you to come out nearly nude. You're very well toned by the way. Shut up. Don't talk about me like that or I'll tell Naruto. He hates perverts. Sanosuke threw his head back and laughed heartily. My dear, that boy is a hypocrite of the highest order. And I'm not a pervert, I just wanted to let you know something and then I'm gone. And that would be, now don't be angry with me, but I have Naruto at the training grounds right now working on those chains of his. Don't worry, he'll still be fresh as a daisy for you this morning. At midnight though he'll pass out at whatever spot he's at, so you might want to make sure he's in bed by then. I'm sure he'll forget that detail. Training with the chains. What's he doing? TSK, TSK. Better for you to find out on your own. It'll be more fun that way. Fine, whatever. Just leave so I can get dressed. She walked past Sanosuke and crossed the room to her closet, standing on her tiptoes to reach the top shelf. The towel shifted ever so slightly and a wide grin shifted onto Sanosuke's face before he disappeared. Ni sas tenten. Naruto would approve. She whipped around, eyes blazing and teeth bared, with kunai in hand, only to find he was gone. She shook with unbridled fury. Fing perverted angel. As she walked through the streets, she tugged Naruto's jacket closer to herself. It was slightly windy and the warmth it provided was welcome. Her thoughts returned to what the angel had told her about Naruto training all night and her hand unconsciously went to the hilt of her katana. If Naruto was worn out, they wouldn't be able to practice and that meant she'd have to work with Lee, Guy, and Neji. She perked up when she had a moment of brilliance. If Naruto was too tired to work out, then she'd bring him along with her and make him suffer through the hugging bouts as well. Misery loves company. As she cropped the hill to their training ground, she saw Naruto sitting cross-legged on the ground, his arms in his lap, leaning against his hammer while the chains whipped and entwined around him. She cautiously crept forward, her hand on the hilt of her sword as it slid from her back. When she was within 10 feet of him, she saw his nose twitch and the chains snapped her attention, swiveling to face her, as if the links on the ends saw her. She slid one foot forward and leapt for him. Instead of rolling away or blocking, however, she found herself fighting against the chains. Their strength was incredible and they seemed to move of their own accord. She eyed them carefully and thrust the blade at Naruto's head. One of the chains wrapped around the sword and pulled it from her hand, before thrusting it into the ground behind him. The chains then continued the dance around him, rubbing against each other every now and then, creating that horrible screeching sound. Tenten sighed and sat down in front of her soulmate. He appeared to be sleeping or in a trance and she wondered how someone could get so good at something in one night. She waved a hand in front of his face to see if he was really out of it. Good morning, Tenten. That wasn't nice, trying to me, you know. Tenten blushed and fiddled with one of the buns on her head. Well, I was just testing you. Yeah, that's it. I wanted to see what you could do. That's very impressive, by the way. Thanks. Hey, let me show you another trick it can do. She watched with great interest as the hammer behind him began to glow slightly and the chains on his left arm quickly wrapped themselves around his arm again, while the chains on the right connected to the hammer. She whistled appreciatively. Wait, that isn't the trick. She seed an eyebrow and her jaw dropped when the hammer and chain lifted into the air and began to whirl around like a propeller. It shot off over her head and she turned just in time to see it obliterate a tree not far away. Naruto opened his eyes to see a very shocked girl and chuckled while reaching out and pushing her jaw back into place. Now, we don't want you catching flies, do we? So, what do you think? Tenten looked back at the hammer and watched in awe, as it seemed to float and came to rest behind Naruto again, the chain disengaging itself and wrapping back around his arm again. That's pretty damn cool. Can it do anything else? Naruto grinned and the chain around his left arm shot out and wrapped around her, lifting her into the air as she shrieked in indignity before being settled gently into his lap. She flushed and punched him in the shoulder. Jerk. What? I thought you'd like the ride. I don't have to actually carry you anymore now. I can have my hands free too. I'd prefer you actually carry me. Oh, why's that? Tenten merely wrapped her arms around his back and nuzzled against him. Naruto stiffened and began to perspire. Tenten. What are you doing? Shut up, dummy. I'm enjoying the silence and besides, it's chilly and you're warm. Okay, but why are you enjoying the silence? Tenten grinned up evilly at him and he closed his eyes, waiting for the proclamation that would end his short life. Because in a little while you're coming with me to train with Guy, Lee, and Neji. And you're going to do it like a good little boy. Got it? Naruto sighed and leaned against his hammer again, closing his eyes and enjoying the feeling of her against him. Fine. But I'm taking my jacket back when we get there. Tenten never opened her eyes. Not on your life, Buster. Naruto sighed as Tenten drug him along. They had to cross through Konoha to get to her regular training grounds with Team Guy and he really wasn't looking forward to it. Alone, Lee and Neji were cool guys, but around Guy, Lee was a self-destructive maniac and Neji was a sullen asshole. Suddenly he remembered his promise to Gamasuke and pulled Tenten into a candy store. What the hell are we in here for? I promised Gamasuke that I'd buy him 2 pounds of candy if he'd help us. Now help me pick out some candy. I gotta buy him £1 too. That little toad isn't ever gonna eat all of it. I'm sure I'll be suckered into summoning some of his buddies so that they can eat it all. I don't think he can take it back with him, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he can't handle 3 pounds of candy though by himself. Tenten laughed and they made their purchase. Now 3 pounds of candy doesn't sound like much until you add in the sugar content and Naruto really didn't want to explain to Gamabunta why a bunch of young toads were so damn hyperactive. He slung the bag of candy over his shoulder and walked beside the brown-haired girl to her training ground. As it came into view he saw 2 green blobs and a white blob. One green blob was pumping his hands in the air, while the other did push-ups. The white blob appeared to be meditating. Naruto cringed at what was coming and began to count down. 3, 2, on. RTENTEN. How wonderful of you to join us on this most youthful morning. Come, and I will show you all how to maintain your flames of youth. Guy-sensei. Look, it is Naruto, come to show us how hot his flames of youth burn. Good morning, Naruto. Will you two keep it down? I don't think Western Konoha heard you yet. Tenten, you're kind of yelling too. Stuff it, Naruto. Guy suddenly appeared before them, his teeth shining in the morning sun. Tenten, I am sorry that my youthful greeting was so boisterous. Allow me to apologize by showing you a new way to throw kunai with your toes. Lee will be your target as his punishment for being too loud. Naruto stood by and watched as the familiar scene unfolded. Guy volunteered Lee for something outrageous, Lee thanked him while crying, and the two fell into their man-hug. Leaving Tenten to her personal hell, he crossed the grounds and sat by Neji. Morning Neji. Neji cracked an eye open and gave a small smile to his friend. Good morning Naruto. What's with the chains? Naruto's grin threatened to break his face as he crossed his legs. I'll show you in a second. Let me get the attention of the Spandex Brigade. Hey Tenten. Bring the tear monkeys over here and I'll show them my new technique. Tenten hauled the two over by the seats of their pants as they ranted about how youthful Naruto was for showing them his new technique. Naruto chuckled as he watched Neji massage his temples. As annoying as Guy and Lee were, they were two of the best people in the world and he knew that Tenten and Neji wouldn't trade them for anything. Well, Neji would for a moment's peace and Tenten might for a new kunai. Okay guys, check this out. Watch the chains and then watch the hammer. Neji, you might want to stand by them. Neji stood and moved beside Tenten, apparently a little too close since she shifted to the side. Naruto shut his eyes and concentrated chakra into the chains. The four watched as the chains unwound themselves and began to wind around him, making that horrible screeching noise. He cracked an eye open and smirked at the three guys' faces. Tenten had a smile on her face as she pulled his jacket around her again. Oh yeah, my man is cool. Naruto seed his head and narrowed his eyes at Neji even as his smirk turned into an evil grin. Neji saw the look and his eyes shot open before he dove to the side, while activating his Byakugan. He quickly rolled to his feet and assumed his stance. Lee and Guy were assaulted by the other chain and the three began a dance as Naruto began to herd them together, causing Lee and Guy to stumble over each other and Neji to contort into ways he didn't know to avoid them. After several minutes, Naruto got bored and brought the chains back, to the relief of Neji and the shouts of joy from Lee and Guy. Yosh. That is a very useful technique Naruto. Might I request that you train with us and try to hit Lee and I as we dodge? Never one to pass up an opportunity to get better, Naruto shrugged and grinned at the dynamic duo. Sure. But before you agree I have one more thing to show you. Everyone leaned in and watched as his hammer glowed and the chain attached itself to the end of the handle, before lifting into the air and spinning round and round. Eyes widened when it decimated a tree behind him and promptly returned before the chains wound around his arms again and Naruto leaned back against the hammer. Neji was awestruck as he deactivated his Byakugan. That was most impressive Naruto. So little chakra was used to control them and yet it was a devastating attack. Most impressive indeed. Guy nodded his head as he struck a contemplative pose. Yes, that was indeed a powerful attack. I hope that you will take Lee and I up on our offer. You seem to have to concentrate a lot to make it work. If Lee and I are attacking you while you attempt to control it, perhaps it will become like second nature and you can perform jutsus while doing it eventually. Lee and Naruto nodded their heads in unison. That sounds like a very good idea, Guy-sensei. But I'll just watch you guys train today, I was up all night working. Besides, I have to pay a friend a debt today and so does Tenten. Oh yeah, I nearly forgot about him. Call him out now and we'll get that over with. Naruto made the necessary seals and Gamasuki appeared before them again. Hey boss. You got the goods. Sure do Suki. You know this is a lot of candy right? Would you like me to call any of your friends to help you eat it? Yeah, that sounds like fun. We little toads hardly ever get to come out here so it'll be like a day off. Hey, where's the cute babe? She owes me £1 too. I'm right behind you. Here's your candy, and thank you again Suki. Now I've gotta go train. Naruto, I'll be back later. Hold my jacket. Naruto scowled and took what she handed him. I believe this is my jacket. Tenten winked at him and sauntered off. Not anymore it isn't. I called dibs. Naruto looked down at Suki and chuckled. It's too bad. I really liked that jacket. Hey, she's worth it. Now then, call out some of my bus. Any ones in particular? Nah, just think that you want a few toads and some will appear. Just make sure they're all roughly my size. I'm friends with everybody my size. Tenten returned to Naruto's side roughly at lunchtime to find him happily chatting with several small toads as they consumed mass quantities of candy. Suki looked up at her as she approached and waved at her with a webbed foot. Hey there, Tenten. Thanks for the candy. The guys all love it. A small brown toad coughed and glared at Gamasuki. Oh yeah, and the girls love it too. Hey. Tenten smiled and patted the female toad on the head and sat down, leaning against Naruto. He smiled at her and then wrinkled his nose. You stink. Her response was to punch him as hard as she could in the shoulder. Asshole, I didn't complain about you this morning. That's because I smell like a rose garden after training. You're not getting this jacket back until you've showered. That's not fair. Them's the rules. I don't make, I just enforce, But you did make that up. It still stands. As the two bantered back and forth, a messenger bird came and landed on the handle of the hammer. Naruto looked up and held out his finger. The bird hopped onto it and he pulled the tiny scroll before shooing it away. He quickly read it and groaned. Tenten picked up on that and frowned. She'd been wanting to spend the rest of the day with him. What's it say? Bar-chan wants to talk to me about Kakashi and Sakura. Tenten bashed him over the head and grabbed her jacket while he was distracted. He glowered at her while she glared back. Don't talk about Tsunade-sama like that. Naruto sighed and stood up, swinging his hammer to his back. He told the toads to gather their candy, and once done, he dismissed them. He looked back at Tenten cradling her jacket and smiled. So dinner tonight. She smiled and stood beside him, giving him a quick hug. Sure. I'll wear my new jacket. She left before he could retort. He watched her fade into the distance and sighed. It's my jacket, damn it. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.